What's up, everybody? April 18th edition of the Fightful MMA podcast. Yours truly, Joe Ferraro, your host. You can follow me online at Showdown Joe, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also follow us here at Fightful MMA, at Fightful MMA on social media, and FightfulMMA.com for all of your mixed martial arts news. It is Tuesday. It is 3 p.m. Elias time. Not Eastern Standard Time, but Elias time, and he's joining us right now at Elias Theodorou. Make sure you do follow him at Elias Theodorou today. He is outside, so it could get windy, it could get ugly, but he's here. What's going on, my man?
It's going to be great. It's a beautiful day. It's practically, well, it is spring, and it's practically summer.
It's not bad out there. I mean, I was driving around Scarborough earlier today, and it was a tad chilly for my liking, but I had I had my dress shirt on, I had a white shirt underneath, so I was kind of okay. Are you dressed for the weather?
I was No, I'm great.
All right, just got a little bit of wind there. You're okay, yeah?
I'm good. Can you hear me? Can't hear me?
Yeah, it's a little windy, but it's all good. It's all good. So, hey, man, the big news. Brad Tavares.
Brad Tavares is taking on another tough fighter, both in the sense that he was on tough and the fact that he is a tough individual. He wants to come and kick my ass, and I'm going to say no, because no means no.
Just no means no. You are calling him, I think, the same as your last opponent, a dead man?
Yes, the technical terms, but who's counting? No, I'm excited. He's, like I said, he's a tough guy, but I think that I have more tools in my toolkit, and I'm going to do what I do.
You're getting windy on me again right there. I don't know if there's a better way you can...
I will find a spot. I will
find a spot. You will hide from the wind. All right. Can you still hear me, though?
Oh, yeah, I can totally hear you.
All right. Now, in terms of Brad Tavares, we know he's a tough guy. We know he's a veteran. We know he's been around. We know that, he can get the job done. He's got some fantastic Muay Thai, and he can mix it up pretty much anywhere and everywhere within the octagon. In terms of your assessment for Brad Tavares, what do you see right now?
Well, both inside the cage and out, I guess I would say inside the cage, he's a tough individual. He always comes to win. Like you said, almost down the top. Here we go. I apologize for this in advance. All right. Next time.
There we go.
Here we go. So the point I was going to say, basically, he's a tough individual that always comes to fight. He's fought veterans. He's fought top 10 individuals. But I think in regards to, and again, he's athletic. He's, comes from a kickboxing background where he's going to try and knock my block off. But like I said before, I have more tools in my toolkit.
Talk about a guy who wants to knock your block off. He does bring, I think he still trains with Ray Sefo, and he's a durable individual. Obviously, fighters are always looking for that finish in a fight, but is it a situation once again where, you know what, you're preparing for a 15-minute war and it's going to be pressure for 15 minutes?
Yes, 100%. I think even with him being a kickboxer with Sefo, and in the sense that he is game, he wants to come at me. I think the issue being he hasn't knocked anyone out in a very long time, and he's on a 2 out of 5 fight streak. But again, losing to someone like Yo Romero is not, and there's no slight against you in that regard. You're losing to someone like Rob Whittaker, like we saw this weekend, what he was capable to do is no slight on you. He's still a tough individual who wants to kick my ass, but I think I have way more to offer. And like you said, for those 15 minutes, I think I'm going to come at the pressure with him. Although he still likes to move forward. My whole job is to push him on his heels while he's trying to do the same to me.
In terms of the training camp, are you changing anything up for this training camp or keeping everything all together into one, TriStar and then with Lachlan and everything like that?
Yeah, same stuff. The only issue being, well, not issue, it's what I love, is all the travel. I traveled a lot last camp. I travel even more this camp. But there's still ways to basically put all 24 hours into your day and properly and with the right people around you, you can get it done. I don't think I'm the traditional fighter in the sense of the one-track mind where this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing. I think the difference with me and why I excel in the way I do is because of the ability to just keep on going, and like I do in my fights.
If you're tuning in now, ladies and gentlemen, you are live with us. We do have the chat open right now on the upper right-hand side of your screen. If you have any questions, suggestions, comments for Elias Theodorou and yours truly, by all means, put them up there. We already have Graham Williams on there saying, quote, "I'm waiting for a bunch of screaming girls to run past in the background looking for Elias," end quote.
Stranger things have happened. No, there's just the groundskeeper here, I think, that might come and yell at me for being in trespassing in the next little bit. But we'll worry about that.
Have you ever done an interview outside and people still want your attention? Because I remember one time, I think I was in Anaheim, if I'm not mistaken, Anaheim or New Jersey. I'm just trying to remember, like there's a pretty big difference between the two. I'm just trying to remember where I was at the time, but I was doing a radio interview for Sportsnet 590 The Fan. I think I was talking to the likes of either Tim and Sid or someone of that nature, people of that nature. And then I'm on the phone, and you can tell your voice is a little different when you're doing an interview. You're not just having a regular conversation with your girl, your wife, a friend. You've got sort of an interview voice going on. And this lady decides to come out and start talking to me. I didn't want to be rude, but I basically turned around and I just kept talking. And then she came around the other way and I just turned the other way. And I was like, hey, what is she doing? And she's trying to have a full-blown conversation with me. In the end, I said, guys, just give me 1 second. I'm like, hi, I'm doing an interview right now. And she's like, oh, I just want to know if you have a lighter. What? Like, go away. Just go away. You ever had a situation like that before?
Not a lighter, because I am a professional athlete and I jog. But what's it called? The point being, I
wasn't smoking.
Sure. People, yeah, not you. But no. So all jokes aside, yeah, for sure, 100%. In different scenarios here and there, whether they knew who I was or not.
You're getting recognized a lot more often now?
Yeah, it's always interesting when I'm out with friends and someone comes up to me, and it happens like 10 times in an evening. And they're just like, whoa. But the other interesting aspect towards that, I think it's like Dunbar's syndrome or Dunbar's theory, where the idea you can only learn 300 names with faces. So it just basically goes from the short-term to long-term memory. Basically, you know, the RAM and the ROM in regards to the computer in your brain. So people fall out all the time. So sometimes it's just weird where you don't know if you know them from, let's say, high school, or they just know you from a TV show.
Oh my God, I've never heard of that. And that's it's just going through my brain right now. It's explaining a lot, that when I see people and when I meet people, doesn't matter what city, it's always like, hey, Showdown, how's it going, man? How you been? Been fantastic. How have you been? Yeah, man, dude, since the last time we spoke. I'm like, yeah, like I remember the last time we smoked and spoke. Wow, all kinds of stuff. But
see, lighter.
Yeah, so what did you call it? The Dunsbar theory?
I think it's Dunbar's theory.
Dunbar's theory. I'm gonna have to look that up because Dunbar's number. I can't even tell you how many people I come across. Even in Buffalo, when I was covering UFC 210, I had people coming up to me at the hotel, at the arena, walking the streets, and oh my gosh, Showdown, I haven't seen you in a long time. How you been? And blah blah. Don't you remember me? I'm like, oh yeah, of course I remember you. Why wouldn't I remember you?
Sure.
What's your name
again?
No,
exactly. No, that's it. That's just basically it, right? Like, and some people are better at remembering faces. Usually it takes one little example of something that will eventually jog your memory, and that's basically just the little worker ants taking the information from one side to the other side, right? So yeah, Dunbar theory. It's happened before, and like sometimes where it's been unfortunate, where it's like someone I worked at a bar with 5-6 years ago, maybe more than that now, like 5-6 years ago for like a summer, and obviously they built it up. We are much closer in regards to friendship as we are, and then I just didn't remember them at first because we worked together for 3-4 months, and they get offended. So there are unfortunate aspects of it beyond just so and so. There's some ramifications, but it's interesting. Most people are, at the very least, are able to understand. I kind of explain it or bring it up.
Absolutely. And for whatever it's worth, you are in a perfect area right now. There's no wind. It is fantastic. We just have to worry about the screaming girls coming by if they do see you. I understand if you start running and attempting to continue this podcast, but I do appreciate it. I want to talk to you about a bunch of things, especially considering tomorrow it'll be the debut of the next season of The Ultimate Fighter. Obviously, TJ Dillashaw, coach number 2. Coach number 1 is Cody Garbrandt, and he's the champion. And what to expect when the show is done. I want to ask you a whole bunch of Ultimate Fighter stuff, because you've been on the Ultimate Fighter. You won the Ultimate Fighter Nations. Yes,
I did.
Tough Nations Canada, and all that stuff there. Canada versus Australia. Walk me through when you first realized, you know what, I need to apply for this show, and the emotions that went through, obviously the tryouts and then being selected. Walk us through all that.
Yeah, no, well, the idea of it coming up, it's an open house. Obviously, there's a range of people. I was 8-0 if I remember correctly. So basically, the point being, but there are people that have 8 fights like myself, more or much less. Funny story. I'll just digress. Some random guy that was there, he said he was a ninja or something to that effect. He didn't have any professional fights, but he did. I think what he was trying to say was he basically shadowed at a dojo in Japan for 3 years, and they thought that should be basically what got him in there. But the point being, funny story, like a week later, he shows up at my gym at Grant's, and he kind of like, he's like, I want to start training. They didn't let me in because I didn't have any professional fights. I want to get some professional fights because this is what I want to do later on. So it was like light sparring day, and basically he tried to take my hat off at one point. I just like looked at Ryan Grant, my coach, and it was like, should I? And he goes, yeah, just do it. And I just basically, and I just beat the brakes off of him, but not like more just picked him apart rather than actually like knocked him out. And at no point did I knock him out, but I just smacked him around for like 25 minutes. Like by the third round, he was just like, all right, that's good. I'm like, no, where are you going? With the championship rounds. And then basically smacked him around for another 2 rounds. And then he's like, I'm just going to go to the washroom. And then never said goodbye to any of us. He just left. He got his stuff from the washroom and just disappeared like a real ninja. But going back to what we were talking about, what I was going to say is, you go there, and then they usually have jiu-jitsu. They pair everyone up. Let's say 50 people show up. There's 25 different pairings. They go for, I think it's like, I want to say it's a minute rolling each. Everyone does their thing. They kind of digress everyone. They kind of cut everyone in half from there. Then moving forward, they do some kickboxing stuff, and then they cut some more people off there. Then they move into the camera and personality aspect, because it is TV. Like we've all mentioned, it's not a sport, it's sport entertainment. And especially when you have something like the Ultimate Fighter, that's a huge component to it. So you do that part, and then they kind of make their final numbers from there. And then you do through a whole process, drug test, head test, body test and all that stuff. And then you get a couple, a call a month or 2 later, if you're lucky.
In terms of the interview process, are you allowed to talk about the kind of questions that they asked?
You know what? It was all basically about yourself. There wasn't anything that kind of like shined out. And I think part of that was it was a Canadian company that did take it over. So I think that I've heard the difference between the Canadian Ultimate Fighter in regards to the questions and the US one is quite stark.
Can you expand?
They try to push your buttons in the other one. It's different points. They really try to get under your skin. I don't know. I wasn't on the other one, so I can't really confirm any of the questions that they asked there. But I heard it's intense.
So, I mean, I've known you. I knew you before you got on the Ultimate Fighter, so I could just imagine. I was actually there for the tryouts. I was there for the grappling portion. I was there for the striking portion, which you did fantastic both times. And then eventually I knew you kind of got selected to get interviewed, but that was the last I'd seen from you for quite some time. I could just imagine what any fighter could go through when they're about to be interviewed, because they've made it now to the 3rd stage, technically speaking. What was going through your mind? I know you're a confident guy, but in that type of situation, me, for example, it's risk versus reward. It's all or nothing. Is that how you felt?
Well, in some ways, I think it was just be you. I think they can kind of smell a bullshit artist a mile away. Whether or not the Canadian one is more polite than the American one, I think if you were to kind of put on this, facade of some sort that is, not you, I think after the 20th minute, because I think they're 30 minutes or something like that. By the 20th minute, it kind of fall apart.
Where were you when you got the phone call or the information that you'd made it to the show?
I got a phone call, basically from the production company that was putting it all together. I was heading right into the gym, and I stopped beforehand. I ended up getting yelled at for being 30 minutes or 10 minutes late because I was on the conversation with them. Basically, because they tell you got it, and then they tell you, they kind of tell you the next steps, when to expect to go into the house and all that jazz, and how long you'll basically be gone for. They just kind of like give you, and then they give you an email and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, the first thing I did was what I wasn't supposed to do. I called my mom and my dad to tell them. Because I was pumped. I was also only 25.
Listen, it's the emotions get the best of you. Now, for those tuned in again live, we do have the live chat open. Any questions, comments, concerns regarding Elias Theodorou and his stint on The Ultimate Fighter, or what you would like to know from a fighter perspective, feel free to post it on there. We'll continue this theme with The Ultimate Fighter because Elias is a winner of Tough Nations Canada versus Australia, and we do have The Ultimate Fighter starting tomorrow with Team Garbrandt versus Team Dillashaw. Now, the time comes to pack. You've got to say your goodbyes, and then you eventually head out to, I believe the show was recorded in Quebec, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, the outskirts of Quebec, just a little bit past Tremblant, in the middle of the sticks. But it was a beautiful, anyone that watched the season can vouch that it was a beautiful cottage with a beautiful surrounding, and I had a blast. Like, winter, obviously, you can knock the fuck out. It might be a different experience. And whatnot, especially if you don't get into the UFC after the fact. For me specifically, I had an amazing time. Like, I loved the mechanics of it, and I knew how many people wanted to be in the shoes that I was in. How many eventually would want to be in, even more would want to be in the actual finale. So along the way, I just, kind of pulled myself back and smelled the roses. I think that's what kind of differentiated. I think that's what one of my keys to success was, the aspect of me in many ways taking a step back, because not that they actually ever tell you what to say. Obviously, they can. The answers you give reflective of the questions they ask, but in many ways they don't tell you anything what to say. So it's one of those interesting things as we all start kind of falling into our narratives of some sort, like our whatever character we're going to be perceived as. So I think there was interesting to see some people that kind of fell into certain narratives and may have lost because of it.
Living that life there's a couple things that I want to bring up. Obviously, it's a fishbowl, right? It's a fishbowl, and you're constantly mic'd. You're constantly, are you constantly mic'd and a camera on you at all times?
To some extent, whether it's actually a cameraman or woman, basically filming you, no. But there is always cameras everywhere. So pretty much anywhere in the house you will be seen to some extent, and they'll be able to almost pick it up in some regard. Whether or not they'll be able to, there are certain ways, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but there are certain ways you could tell how to ruin a shot if you didn't want it to be set and didn't want it to be filmed. Because there's different ways to figure out.
You can't say it, can you?
I'm just saying, if I'm supposed to be talking like this and I look right at something, breaking the fourth wall might not be what they want. Who knows? But it's neither here nor there.
Absolutely. Now, you think about one of the things, and I don't have to be careful by saying this, but you mentioned cameraman or camera woman. The hardest thing that I've been told by every single fighter, and it stuck with me maybe after season 5 of The Ultimate Fighter, was told, and they looked me right in the face and said, Joe, can you go 6 weeks in a house without seeing a woman? And I said, well, hell no. I said, if it's depending on my career, if this is my job, this is what I have to do, and it's going to be the big difference, maybe. But they said, you can do it, but man, is it ever because you don't have any access to women
or men, but what's it called? Well, men, you have access to men, I guess, definitely. But the point being,
Jesus.
No, be professionals. Like, whoever told you that? I guarantee you, I've been with more women in my year than they have in their life.
Here we go. Here we go.
The point being, control it. But don't get me wrong. Right after that, especially when you knew you won, the confidence after that.
But your game's on point. Your game is totally on point. Confidence to the roof. It doesn't matter who turns you down. It's like, really? Okay, next.
I don't even care. And then it's the whole, again, it's the Babe Ruth situation. No one counts the strikeouts. They only count the home run. But
interesting.
But anyways, I digress. The point being, no, it was fine. I was having so much fun there. Obviously, it was a bummer, and the idea of yes, but that's what the whole point of delayed gratification is. Like to achieve anything you want, you can't just be sitting there and just dopamine. Like anything worth waiting is worth it.
Absolutely. The psychological effect of being in that fishbowl for 6 weeks, that's approximately the time it took to record. Am I correct?
It was 7. I think with ours, it was 7.
7 weeks. Okay. Now you're dealing with 15 other alpha males in the home who have one job as well, who have one goal. And then it gets to the point where some guys are competing and they lose and they realize they may not be coming back on the show. And it just, emotions start going up and down as you progressed through the tournament bracket. There are times, I guess, you're lonely, you miss your family, you miss your friends, you miss the outside world, what's happening in the outside world. How did you deal with all that?
Well, one, I didn't lose, so I didn't have to worry about that component at any point of the actual stay. But I guess you got to see a lot of people who are putting out this persona of them being very tough and whatnot start to deflate once their ego was put back into check. So it was interesting to see that. Like someone like Dan Kelly, for instance, kind of looked at me as like, look at this young punk, like forget this like pretty boy or whatever like that. And then once Sheldon destroyed him in a couple of seconds, he was very more modest. I think in many ways it's a reality check because it's as real as it gets, as the big font says all over the gym.
Jackson MMA in the live chat wants to know any crazy untold stories from your tough experience that didn't make the cut?
Oh yeah, plenty, but I can't talk about it. You signed a $5 million non-disclosure, and I'll be happy to tell you if you give me the $5 million.
Oh, look at that. So let me ask you this. Are there ever times, and of course, this is me because I've got a television mind, I've got a producer's mind, I've got the experience of knowing when I'm filming something or recording something or being a part of a shoot, what potentially is going to stay, what won't make the cut? Were you in a situation where you're like, oh, that's going to make the show, and it didn't make the show, or there's no chance they're going to talk about that, and then bang, there it is on the broadcast?
100%, 100%. Especially because things. Well, I don't know. Like again, one way I could kind of describe it, not everything falls exactly in chronological order. Sometimes something that kind of happened with week 1 will be kind of in the middle with week 2, not for anything other than kind of it talks about the bigger picture, right? Like it kind of puts together in some way capacity. No specific or whatever. But what I'm trying to say is the idea that you're there for 6-7 weeks and you think something's just hilarious or something so big, and you just can't believe it. Like one of the things, like that Tyler kid that was there, loved the kid. He was a little goofball, 19 years old, but even younger inside. And we ended up going to like a Habs game, and it was so funny. Actually, this is an untold story. I guess it's just so funny. We ended a Hab game. They let us out and they filmed the whole thing. They put it on basically one of the episodes, like kind of like a summary or a cut to with this other thing. They kind of showed it at one point, but because again, they had 15 of us, all the teams or whatever like that. And this is right after Tyler ends up winning the fight. with Nordine, and he's just partying. He ends up having like 25 beers by the time we get to the
Oh,
game. By the time we get to the game, like just chugging beers unrelated and just screaming at the top of his lungs, Queenslander, Queenslander, in the middle of like the national anthem at a Habs game, and
not good.
just obliterated, right? And like there's all these cameras, so that like, and we're a box, like a really wealthy box, and like next to us there's another really wealthy box, and all these chicks, right? And like they're kind of like, they look at all of us and like, what is this, like The Bachelor or something? And then all of a sudden, Tyler just goes, just lets out the hugest burp, and then just starts like yelling Queenslander at the same time. And her face was just so mortified. She's just like, oh my God. And they all just turned away and stopped talking to us. And then eventually he ended up, like puking his brains out.
So he completely blocked whatever attempts were going to be made that evening.
Yeah. No, but yeah, you're not that anyways having a conversation with anyone like we've already talked about. But
Yes,
no, like,
exactly.
so like that's something like again, there was this whole thing. It was like he made a scene at the Habs game. Like it was a scene at this very like rich individual. I think it was even the owner's box. Like I think it was like that legit. And he's just like screaming in the middle of the Canadian national anthem.
What a mess. Graham Williams is back on the live chat as well. I think I know the answer to this, but we're going to ask anyways. Did the Ultimate Fighter help prepare Elias for the UFC's media requirements, interviews, etc., or was his confidence something that came naturally? And I think we lost Elias. I don't see his image on my screen anymore. He'll probably, hopefully, be able to dial in. Hopefully his battery on his phone did die on him, and he did charge it before this. What I do know about Elias, like I said, I've known Elias for quite some time. Long before he got on the Ultimate Fighter, we had the conversation prior to him. Oh, you're back?
I'm back.
You're back. All right. I was just telling the story about how you and I met long before the Ultimate Fighter, and how the show would be absolutely perfect for a guy like you, or vice versa. You'd be perfect for that show. I was reading a question off the live chat here by Graham Williams. And guys, girls, if you're tuned in right now, by all means, live chat, put up your questions, comments, suggestions, and we'll try and get out to Elias or myself as soon as possible. Graham Williams wanted to know, did the Ultimate Fighter help prepare Elias for the UFC's media requirements, interviews, etc., or was his confidence something that already came naturally?
I think it was already there. I think I was just being me in many different ways. At one point, I was actually fighting Lachlan. Like you mentioned, he kind of came with us to the actual interviews. The funny thing being, he kind of like a hilarious quote where he's basically said that I lack the simple shame. I have a shame deficiency gene, so there's no shame in my game. So I don't know. I think in many ways it's like, again, when you're on TV, when you're trying to project something, it's supposed to be you, just a little bit more magnetized, like with a higher magnitude. And I think that's what someone like the Ultimate Fighter does. And then eventually, all the media stuff. There's obviously a method to my madness, but at the end of the day, it's still madness.
Absolutely. What about the discussion all the time about, you've got to maintain your weight for the 6 weeks? How are you able to see, or how are you able to do keeping your weight on point for 6 weeks, other than just simply being disciplined?
I'm a big guy, so like I was actually Luke and myself were actually the heaviest guys in there. I showed up at 210, while everyone else was like 200 pounds. But again, part of that is the fact that I'm an actual middleweight, and so is Luke. Nordine wasn't, you know what I mean? So Sheldon wasn't. So they were kind of nervous about that, but I was just a professional through and through. And that's kind of why I wanted to fight right away. Just so once you fight, like I fought second after Cajun fought, right? So me fighting second allowed me like 20 days until the next fight.
There's always talk about the Ultimate Fighter contracts. Obviously, I would say most people aren't big fans of the Ultimate Fighter contract, fighters that is. Was that ever discussed in the house? Like, we're going to have to sign this if we win, but it's actually a crappy contract, or you know what, I don't care, I'm signing this thing, I'm going to be happy, I'm going to be on the UFC roster?
Definitely both. It's a double-edged sword in that regard, obviously. as someone that's about to finish his contract, it is obviously unfortunate, but there's opportunities. People have been let out of their contract, and I'm looking to smash Brad Tavares and get an option.
Absolutely. Whoever's running that Fightful account, welcome to 35 minutes ago. We're trying to get Elias. He had to move where he was before, so he did get out of the wind. But now, by the sounds of it, he's getting into a vehicle, so there will be no more wind, and we'll get some clarity.
No more wind. That's what I thought.
There you go. One of the things that you mentioned that it's the final fight of your Ultimate Fighter contract. Am I correct?
No, not this one. It'll probably be the next one after that, I believe it is.
The next one after that. Now, obviously, you're doing a fantastic job marketing yourself, branding yourself. Patrick Cote and I discussed this yesterday about both of you understanding that there's more to. Are you going to be driving doing this?
No. I'm just putting it out of the car just so I can be charging while I'm doing this as well. Options, multitasking.
Multitasking. The importance of branding yourself. How much has the Ultimate Fighter helped you get where you need to be, or is it just that, you know what, now that I'm in the UFC, people know me more for being in the UFC than they did when I was on the Ultimate Fighter?
No, it definitely built you up, and specifically being the first Canadian. There's obviously huge cachet from that. It was on national television and also international television, and there are people that watched me, the 10 weeks or whatever the television show, the 11 weeks it was, all the way through. So the amount of people that have messaged me along my career that have said, hey, I've been watching you since the Ultimate Fighter. It's a great opportunity and a huge tool. And I think obviously there are some deficits in regards to the contract in some way, but at the same time, I start off way higher than everyone else does. I'm not starting at 10 and 10, 12 and 12, 7, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm starting off a lot higher. And at this point, in my third year, actually Sunday would be my, I think it's my third year being in the UFC. But the point being, there's so many different opportunities that I've gone outside of that because of basically my brand recognition and what I've been able to already accomplish. So yes, there are pros and cons to everything, but I think would I do it any way differently? Probably not.
Guys, if you're tuning in right now, we have about 10 minutes before we wrap up this podcast. So get your questions, suggestions, and comments in there on the live chat. I'll try and get them out to Elias as they come up on the screen here. Eddie Gordon and Rashad Evans were present at UFC 210. Eddie Gordon, obviously, on this season's or this season coming up of the Ultimate Fighter, he's back on there. Rashad Evans, obviously a contestant and a coach in the past, and the question was asked. The obvious question, would you do it again? Obviously, Eddie did do it again. But the question I have for you is, would you do it again if the opportunity was presented itself to be part of some sort of cast that'd be involved once again with the Ultimate Fighter?
Yeah, if they add another zero onto that, sure.
So it's all about the money. Do it all over again, right?
For sure. Why would I do it all over again? Because again, like, why would I put myself into another contract like that? For the same results again. If they want to say, welcome and getting your 6-figure contract with the UFC, Elias will definitely do that. Or 7-figure contract with the UFC.
Oh, it went from 0 to 6-figure to now 7 figures. You ever think there's going to be a day when that 6 or 7-figure contract will just be a standard in the UFC?
Oh, I hope so. It all depends on, it's not for everyone in boxing. So, like, obviously there are negatives in regards to the price point. There was a huge caveat before that isn't there anymore, where that Reebok has kind of removed the opportunity to, not Reebok per se, but rather the UFC, to put outside brands. Obviously that's a negative. I probably lost $50,000 easily a year ago or 2 years ago when it kind of happened, rather than who knows at this point. Imagine what more I could possibly ask, someone like Per Plus for if I was actually able to put branding as well. But I digress. The point being, the kind of thing I'm putting out there is the idea that I think with boxing, obviously there's people like Floyd Mayweather, but it's been around for so much longer. It's 100 years old. I think the direction that they are going, obviously Conor McGregor is the huge example. He's definitely in the direction of being the first 100 millionaire. in the UFC. So yes, it's in the right direction. But again, I don't begrudge any of the actual, I guess, not as luxurious aspects or not as positive aspects in regards to being a professional mixed martial artist, because I myself have been using it to the best of my ability. I have a TV show and a movie that, if all goes well after my fight, I'm going to be on doing a TV show and a movie. And like the TV show, I am a host, I'm a producer, and I own 25% of it. So I may not be getting $1 million from the UFC, but I might have found my own way of finding it somewhere else.
Do you think when this Reebok deal is done with the UFC, they'll re-up it or they'll change it and go back to what there was before? Or do you think they've made enough money from that Reebok deal that they'll do it all over again?
Well, the Reebok deal was their ability to package it up and sell it. That was them thinking long term of how to have a blue chip, and kind of like that was the whole purpose of them getting Reebok, was just for them to sell it. It's quite obvious. Whether they continue moving forward, it's up to them. I don't know. It's their prerogative. I think it makes sense in regards to. It really depends what the UFC wants to do. Like, again, it looks better seeing the Reebok in there, like, plain and simple, as a uniform. I think it does. Obviously, there was the negativity that kind of came around. It wasn't really Reebok's fault. It was kind of maybe how everything was kind of put together. But I think with that being said, now that they've gotten a couple years under their belt and have the kinks of putting together so many shows with so many athletes and so many names and so many opportunities to fuck up a name.
Oh my, you're right.
So obviously they've gone through that, but it was a huge transition. It's a huge partnership. So I don't begrudge someone like Reebok, one, for wanting to do it, for trying, and then having some stumbles along the way. I think I love my mixed martial arts fans, but I think sometimes we're the most jerky. But the
Dramatic.
Yes, I was gonna say jerk faces, but the point. But even with that, I think a lot of it is actually with good intention towards the fighters, and it's all about pay. So I'm always on the side of more pay. To your question about, like, will there ever be something like a draft, and that obviously our versions would be something like the Ultimate Fighter, and looking for a fight. I think there are opportunities. I think it is in the direction in that way. Someone just has to look at, like, Sage Northcutt. He just needs jiu-jitsu and a personality.
A personality. Wow. Gotcha. Totally gotcha. All right. Before we wrap up the podcast, I want to go back to your fight upcoming with Brad Tavares. Give us the date and location, please, sir.
I don't know the exact. Well, it's Vegas. Hurrah. And we've talked about that. You're more than welcome to come. It's National Fight Week, July 7th. It's work.
You really think the owner of this site, Jimmy Van, and managing editor Sean Ross Sapp would allow me back to Las Vegas, where I haven't been in about 2 or 3 years, with you?
Yes. You'll never know if you don't ask. You never know if you don't ask.
Imagine a behind the scenes with you and I in Vegas.
But the funner stuff would be the after the fight. You don't want to see me when I'm all stinky and skinny. Ugh. But
we can have like a 2-part sort of show, like follow Showdown Joe, follow Elias during fight week. The fight happens, and then we join together for the next day or so.
Yes. Where I'm eating all the food to get down, or lack of food, cutting weight, and you're just enjoying, I don't know, tacos and Caesar, and I'm sad, jealous.
And then me making the phone call to Jimmy Van. I need bail money, dude. I got to get out of jail.
Well, no, you got to be preemptive. I won't get caught. You can't be. My dad always told me, you don't have to be the fastest, just not the slowest. And Pretty sure I can outrun you.
Well, whoever is manning the Fightful account on the chat right now, it just said in bold, not in bold, in capital letters, permission granted. And then after that said, as long as the video content makes up for the stipends, which is basically the cost of sending me out there. I don't know if that'll ever. Yeah, well, we'll see. If I have to make bail, then we're in big trouble. But no, I can behave myself. I've been to Vegas in enough times. Fightful, it's always SRS running it. No, not always, but okay. Not to my understanding, but okay. Yeah, that would be fantastic. International Fight Week, coming down, doing a behind the scenes, or catching up with you the whole time. Now, that's going to be an interesting card. There's some names already being mentioned there, and I think Dana White, if I'm not mistaken, is looking at adding Jon Jones versus Daniel Cormier to that very event.
Tremendous.
You like?
For sure. Why wouldn't you? Well, will it happen? Who knows?
Well, he said if John is ready.
Yeah, no, I understand the idea of warm-up fights and all that stuff. I don't know. I know people are kind of saying with might want to get him as quick as possible. You know what I mean? For DC, he might want to fight him now. But honestly, like, the DC to beat was the last DC, I think, because he didn't make weights. Like, he didn't look good. And he's just
yes. But I'll say this, Elias. DC's getting married in May, right? And this fight would happen in July. That's not a full training camp. So again, the opportunity for John is there again.
Jones, for sure. You don't think he's going to eat a little of that cake?
Right?
Cake and waffles for
right?
What's it called, at his honeymoon? Are you crazy? Are you crazy?
This could be, not that we're not saying that Jon Jones can't defeat Daniel Cormier. He's already defeated him. But if there's going to be an easier route where, and listen, DC did say in that post-fight press conference, you know what, I screwed up. I need to respect discipline, nutritional discipline a lot more than I did for this camp for Anthony Johnson. Well, dude, if you're going to be fighting, and I can't see DC saying no, because I think, in my opinion, the only thing he believes in his own current career that he needs to do is fight Jon Jones one more time, beat Jon Jones, and I could see him retiring as soon as he does that.
Yeah, I can see that. And then never giving Jon the opportunity to fight him. But then, the first part about that is, the best part with that would be the hardest part would be actually beating him.
Yeah, but then if he does beat him, it's 1-1.
Yeah. But I can see him kind of walking away on top like that. It depends on his financials, right?
Well, he did say the good thing I liked about what he said is that he's made enough money that he doesn't have to fight for money anymore. Although everyone, if you can make more money, that's the whole point. If you can make more money, you're going to do it. I mean, you're talking to an entrepreneur right now. It's not that I don't want to make more money. I make money for my son, so he never has to worry about technically working for anyone else other than dad when he gets older. That's my purpose, is to, you pay the mortgage off. You want to get a cottage, you want to get a boat. The more money you have should make you more money. And DC basically said, I've got enough money, I'm fine. And by the way, on the live chat, we do have Jackson MMA say he would watch our 2-part reality show or behind the scenes on International Fight Week. So we do have one viewer. Ninja Pirate, I'd be more disappointed by DC failing for diuretics than Jones failing for PEDs. Hey, listen, other than diuretics or holding the towel down, I'm sure there's going to be something likely that's going to happen during that weigh-in. What do you think?
Don't jinx it, Joe. Don't jinx it. So, who knows? Like, again, we've tried this 3 times now.
By the way, how was your Easter long weekend?
What's it called? Ate some food, then ran it off. Family. Yourself?
I said, you actually, for those that don't know, on all my social media, I posted a picture of the spread at my mother-in-law's or my in-laws' house that my father-in-law and mother-in-law put together for the family, and I promised myself I would not step on the scale until Thursday. But Monday, yesterday, was weight day, and I busted my ass working out hard with the weights. Today was cardio, busted my ass doing cardio, and then I stepped on the scale after I showered to make sure that, just a little bit of replenishment. I have not gained a pound.
Nice.
After all that damn food.
There you go. That's
Now,
a win for me.
Training camp, is your training camp started now for the fight in July, or are you still holding off?
Well, I've known about this fight for a while. I'm in, like I basically want to be at the end of this month. Sense that I could fight at any point. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I'm an athlete 365. I think at this point we have just under 3 months. It's July 11th, so we're it's the 20th, so we're just under, like I said, it's just under July 7th, so I'm even further
so you
away.
do have
but anyways, the point
time to enjoy
and
or enjoy life a little bit.
But even when I enjoy, I'm still out training every single day.
Yeah, no doubt in my mind. All right, before we say goodbye, I will not talk to you, obviously, for another week on here. Texas is a different story. But in terms of the next week, what's in store for Elias Theodorou?
It's this weekend. I got a bunch of different meetings I have throughout, and then I go to Montreal at the end of next week. It's the girlfriend's birthday, so we're going to celebrate that. So I got 1 or 2 more good times left in me. But what's it called? Go to Montreal, then LA, come back to Montreal, and then training. So I will be either, if I can remember, I will be in Montreal the next time we speak.
All right. We look forward to speaking to you next week. As for the live chat, guys, thank you very much. Ninja Pirate, that question you have there, I do not know the answer to that. I have I guess, eliminated myself or stepped away from anything Ryzen related, so I don't have the answer to that whatsoever, my friend. To those that have tuned in live, we thank you very much. For those that tuned in afterwards on iTunes and on Stitcher, we thank you as well for all your support. I say it every week, guys, please just tell one friend. Tell one friend to join us on these podcasts, and we will get much bigger every day, every week, and we'll make sure that Fightful MMA is a force to be reckoned with, not just in the online mixed martial arts community, but just in combat sports in general. We thank Elias, as always. Make sure you do follow him online at Elias Theodorou. His posts are absolutely fantastic on Instagram. They are crazy on Twitter. Believe you me, sometimes I'm afraid to like or retweet stuff because it's just too hilarious and I don't want to get myself in trouble, but he doesn't care. We'll get to that another time, but do please follow him online at Elias Theodorou. Yours truly, Joe Ferraro, can be found on social media at Showdown Joe, at Fightful MMA as well for the site, and FightfulMMA.com for all your mixed martial arts news. Tomorrow is Wednesday, which means at 9 p.m. Eastern, hopefully 9 p.m. Eastern, Sean Pearson will join me. Make sure you have your earmuffs because it likely will get ugly. We haven't talked to Sean in a couple of weeks, so he might be miserable. But until then, as always, we say ciao for now.